So IGN has been on a roll of bad reviews. First off, we had the campaign for Battlefield. People got mad at that one. Then we had Arc Raiders, which in IGN's defense, theirs was during the playtest, but still a bad review. People disagreed with the scores that they gave the games. I believe they gave Battlefield a 5 out of 10. And now we have the Black Ops 7 review. Now, I haven't heard anything about the review. I don't know what they say, but right now the like to dislike ratio kind of says it all. So I'm curious what they're going to have to say about this one. And I'll give you my input on the game as we go through. Also, I have a campaign review up as of today. It should go live before this video does on InkTV. So I'll try to link that down in the description, but if not, it's just over on InkSlasher. So check it out. But this is what IGN has to say.
Tangles more. Smoke out.
This is the very beginning of the campaign.
Bucking the usual trend of breaks between numbered sequels, Call of Duty Black Ops 7 is following just 12 months on from Black Ops 6, and you'd perhaps assume that meant only small tweaks to what was one of the series' high points last year. But
I mean, the campaign was all right last year, but it wasn't one of the series' high points. The Cold War was, Black Ops 2 was, Black Ops 1 was. Those are like the top three.
Teams at Raven and Treyarch evidently don't see it that way, and have instead built one of the most unconventional COD campaigns to date.
That's true.
In many ways, it doesn't feel like a COD single-player mode. It's more like a multiplayer experiment squeezed into a campaign shell, playing.
That's actually like a good way of explaining it. It feels like an experiment. That's exactly what this mode feels like.
Best when you're accompanied by squad mates, echoing zombies or the now defunct DMZ at times. But it all culminates in a brand new endgame portion that stitches together aspects of COD's past open world successes and failures in an attempt to become something new. In reality, that post-credits content is a repetitive shooting gallery that adds little to the excitement that leads up to it. I recently criticised Battlefield 6's single player for playing it safe and not taking any risks. And to Black Ops...
Like, to be clear, Battlefield 6's campaign wasn't great. I think like now looking back on it, it is about a 5 out of 10. The multiplayer is great, but yeah, the campaign is pretty lackluster. That's exactly the way I describe it. It was, if you took like an old, my camera just died. If you took like an old school Call of Duty game and added a fresh coat of paint to it and had a lackluster story, that's exactly what Battlefield 6 is.
7's credit, the same can't be said here. The problem, however, is that not many of its big swings hit, resulting in one of Call of Duty's most intriguing yet flawed campaigns.
What on earth are they going to say is intriguing about this?
Much of Black Ops 7's intrigue emanates from one fundamental design choice. For the first time in many years, a Call of Duty campaign is fully playable in 4-player co-op.
So I say this in my review, but does everyone know that World at War was a co-op campaign? Does anyone remember this? Like, they also had skulls that you could have modifiers on the campaign. They're actually cards, but skulls like Halo, where you could have modifiers and then you'd get points and you'd see the points compared to your other teammates at the end of each mission. Does anybody remember this? Black Ops 3 as well, yeah?
It really does feel like it's made with that in mind as the preferred method of play. This comes with both positives and negatives. Teaming up with friends is good fun, with fighting big bosses that have multiple weak points to fire upon simultaneously, or stealthily working through an
the giant plant. Yep, feels like Call of Duty.
Enemy area tactically, both coming with a good deal of satisfaction.
Nice and quiet.
But it also detrimentally affects the solo experience. From not having AI companions fill in for you if no buddies are online, or kicking you for inactivity if you're idle for too long, to not even being able to pause due to its online-only nature. Its open areas and endgame portions seem catered towards a group experience as well, and can end up just a little lonely when zipping around by yourself. To an extent, it feels like Activision is finally admitting that most people come to its hallmark shooter for multiplayer fun, rather than the single-player story.
So that's always been true. Like, more people play multiplayer than single player, but I look at it as their campaign now since Modern Warfare 2019 as almost a world builder. You put together a movie that you play through so that builds up the multiplayer and the war zone and all of that, so people know the world that they are in, the characters that they are playing. And they just didn't really build any of that with this campaign.
story modes the series was founded on. There are also no difficulty options this time around,
yes,
meaning
that, too.
that in theory it should scale the threat depending on how many players are in your squad. In my experience though, the number of enemies in a level remains the same, leaving me feeling overwhelmed by foes even in its earliest levels. By comparison, playing in a full squad makes these encounters a breeze, with not enough targets to go around sometimes. In fact, enemy numbers are uneven across the campaign as a whole, sometimes swarming you with dozens of rabid rushers, but at others presenting you with a couple of soldiers wandering through a door when you're expecting
The actual difference is if you're playing solo, you're going to run into enemies, certain enemies that are just bullet sponges.
an onslaught. It's admittedly a difficult balance to get right, but one that has not been achieved.
So I'll say this because I was talking to Ice about it last night. I truly believe that this game wasn't just worked on by Raven. I think the campaign was worked on by Treyarch and Raven, and this is Treyarch's first campaign since Black Ops 3. I'm going to talk about that more in my review, but it makes sense because the Raven campaigns that we know include Cold War and include Black Ops 6, and you can see the similarities between those two, like the Most Wanted mission and the KGB mission between those two games, things like that, the safe houses. This game has none of that.
Here. As for the structure of the campaign, Black Ops 7's story is delivered at breakneck speed, taking me just about 5 hours to reach the endgame. Its 11 missions threw me through one exotic location,
which is like the same as a Battlefield game, the same as all other Call of Duty games. It's the same length.
to the next, from one time period to another, and deep into nightmare realms full of otherworldly horrors and delights.
Your suffering only brought us closer together.
Why is Menendez even in this game? Seems like Call of Duty.
The year is 2035, and new threats are here to instigate a global collapse once again. The re-emergence of Black Ops 2 villain Raul Menendez thrusts the playable unit Spectre 1 into action and soon has them facing off against an evil tech company called the Guild. What follows is a set of missions that throws you in and out of reality thanks to a fear toxin being weaponized by the Guild, led by Kiernan Shipka's Emma Kagan, who is trading in Mad Men for Mad Mechs here.
Initiate testing sequence.
Was she in Mad Men? Was that the joke there?
A combination of cliched evil sci-fi tech corp and Batman Arkham Scarecrow-esque antics leads each level to interesting places from a visual perspective, as long-buried memories of our protagonists are dredged up and
Oh
morphing.
yeah, this is a solid point. They actually had early access to the campaign. Interesting. I don't know of anyone who had early access. It's a good point.
To horror-filled mazes. I do wish there was a little more in terms of mission variety when it comes to actual level and objective design though, with
Agreed.
corridor shooting taking the lead in most of these excursions. If last year's Black Ops 6 leaned more into grounded espionage and subterfuge, 7 is a much louder proposition, choosing to demolish the lobby of a complex to gain access to it rather than sweet-talking the security guard standing in front of it. As a result, there
Every
is
mission
no
felt
shortage
exactly
of
the
big
same.
moments justifying its blockbuster label. Dodging giant falling machetes like you stumbled into a Looney Tunes cartoon is a one-off joy, as is
It's not a
taking
joy.
control of a lavish luxury boat and ramming it into the side of a building. Moments like this feel pinched right out of Christopher Nolan's back pocket and sit perfectly in the Call of Duty mold.
I mean, yes, a moment like this is what Call of Duty has been founded on. Yeah, I do agree about that point, but
And that's just the opening of one of the standout missions, which takes place in Tokyo and has you dipping into its subway systems and leaping across rooftops.
This is a
There's a
standout
great sense
mission?
of forward momentum to levels like this, and I'm a massive fan of them. I just wish the campaign were more like this Japanese chapter, as I'm not
Every mission is exactly like this one.
so keen on the ones taking place in the more open zone areas of the fictional city-state of Avalon, which struggle to bottle the same exciting energy. These typically have you moving across wider patches of
like the Avalon ones were weaker, but the rest of them are pretty much the same as that, the B
map in order
team
to
one.
chase the next cluster of enemies to take down, and essentially serve as tutorials for its endgame. In fact, much of the time, it doesn't really feel like a Call of Duty campaign at all. Yes, it has the militaristic hallmarks, but borrows just as much from horde shooters like Left 4 Dead and its own in-house zombie modes. It makes for an uneven set of missions, some of which really don't work for me, but with others that do manage to hit the spot when they capture some of the COD cinematic legacy. As you might expect, the gunplay is snappy and satisfying, with SMGs delightfully ripping through armoured enemies and sniper rifles really coming into their own and popping out bits of brain in some of the campaign's open areas. The firearms are supported by a fantastic selection of skills and gadgets too, with kill streaks making their way into single player, such as the joyously destructive War Machine, allowing for quick mob.
I didn't mind how some of the kill streaks were in there and like the hand cannon and things like that. I didn't mind those whatsoever.
Cleanups. I'll admit, I was initially skeptical of the near future setting and Call of Duty's return to tinkering with near future tech when it comes to movement, but on the whole, the experiment is largely a success. Wall jumping.
I think the near future isn't the problem here. Like, you can do a good near future or even far future campaign. People love the Infinite Warfare campaign, right? So it's not like it can't be done.
It can be a little clunky, but the kinetic super jump is very fun to use as a quick flanking tool, as is my favourite of the bunch, the grapple hook. Swinging up to roofs to find a better vantage point before swooping down on a wingsuit to get back up close opens up each level's architecture in interesting ways. It may never reach that Titanfall 2 gold standard when it comes to FPS mobility, but there are flashes of it here, which is always welcome. This desire to experiment also carries into its approach to boss design, which is by no means revolutionary when it comes to FPS campaigns, but a relatively new thing for Call of Duty.
I mean, like, if this was in Endgame or this was in Zombies, okay. But like, does it not feel just really out of place? Am I the only one that thinks that?
Appreciate the efforts made in order to make each have its own gimmick, even if they all ultimately come down to draining an oversized health bar while dodging projectiles. In fact, enemy variety is quite impressive this time around, with human, mechanical and hallucinatory foes offering different threats that challenge you at all distances. Guild forces include a robot army, as well as traditional militia types such as the machine gun wielding raiders, colossal armor plate.
The other thing too is if it was one mission that had something like that, where it was like, okay, this is the mind bending mission. Maybe they keep the one where they go into Vorkuta, and like they have some sort of boss in that. Okay, but when it's every second mission, it doesn't really fit. The one that does is the Sentry turret, and that's by far the easiest one. You just throw an EMP at it and shoot it. Like, that's it.
Titans and other NFL team adjacent units. Yes, most can be handled with some well-aimed assault rifle fire to the head, but there are more effective ways to deal with them if you choose to explore your arsenal. After the main story's credits have rolled, you're offered a chance to experience its epilogue, which takes place in the open region of Avalon that's teased throughout. If you played Call of Duty's DMZ mode, then you'll have a rough idea of what to expect here. It's
more like Modern Warfare Zombies.
Extraction shooter, except it's not. You and up to 3 friends can team up and drop into this battle royale sized map and complete the activities that litter it with eye-soaring regularity. On every street corner are guild checkpoints or zombie infested buildings to clear out as you progress through its difficulty tiered regions in order to reach its final boss, located at the epicenter of the island's
did they actually beat the boss?
The catch, if your squad goes down, you lose all of your progress. That progress is mainly tied to your combat rating, a number that goes up the more killing and map icon clearing you do, and it's therefore up to you to know when to call it quits on a certain run and extract from the map within a time limit. In theory, I like this idea and think there are the bones of an exciting mode here.
He's actually right about this.
Something that could capture the magic the likes of Helldivers 2 has done in recent times.
He's actually right.
But as is, it unfortunately gets a little tired a little too soon. Objectives are almost all exclusively go to this place and clear out the enemies here, which I understand is part of the fundamentals when it comes to shooters, but I would have appreciated a little more variety.
Again, I'm going to talk about this in my review, but yes, getting to level 60 is incredibly boring, and then you get into the end zone, like the tier 4 zone, and then you start getting exotics. But the problem is you can't keep any of the exotics. You can only hold one at a time. You can't keep any of them. Like, you don't have an inventory out of the game. And on top of that, they don't count for camos or weapon levels. So in early game, there's no point in using them at all. And then there's one boss. So there's 0 point to get these exotic weapons. Am I making sense?
And something that mirrored the minor puzzle-solving sections of the main campaign, or at least clever uses of the gadgetry it introduces. All semblance of interesting level or mission design is traded in upon entry here for a few hours of relatively mindless shooting in order to watch some numbers tick up. In some ways, it sits somewhere between the campaign missions and zombies in its design, but frustratingly borrows the least interesting aspects of both, neglecting the mission structure and mystery solving that each mode thrives on. It results in a reasonably enjoyable but not essential second serving to the campaign. And don't worry if the endgame doesn't sound like your cup of tea or even sounds a little daunting, the ferocity of its bullet sponge hordes can get overwhelming in its latter stages, especially when heading in solo. The story does wrap up satisfyingly enough beforehand for it to not feel like you're missing out on an ending completely.
Sniper! Well, no need to rush things. I've got nowhere else to be. You've got nowhere left to run.
This was weird too. She kind of just shows up as like, okay, wait, who are you?
Where's the sniper? She's up. Oh shit, lost visual.
It's a story nowhere near as accomplished as last year's efforts though, effectively
Very
a
true.
direct sequel to Black Ops 2 that also ties into the events of Black Ops 6, presumed knowledge and the speed at which its setup is told.
See, this is where someone like an IGN reviewer isn't going to know the nuance of the Call of Duty story, so they're not going to realize how bad some of the connections are.
Can be a little disorientating, especially if you aren't familiar with its 2012 predecessor. The themes are personal this time around, with David Mason placed centre stage as he battles with his past, namely the loss of his father Alex. There are some fun revelations along the way, as well as treats for long-term fans of the Black Ops series. But as someone who has personally never held those characters in as high regard as their Modern Warfare counterparts, the pulling of the heartstrings didn't quite work for me. That being said, if you are someone who has always preferred the adventures of Woods, Mason, Adler and co, I'm sure you'll have a great time here. It does mean
Adler, though.
that this
No Adler.
revisiting of the past, combined with a thick layer of exposition, can make the early hours of the story relatively impenetrable for newcomers.
I can't wait for Black Ops 8 to continue the Black Ops 6 story.
So I'd bear that in mind if you're coming in fresh.
Stop looking backwards, David. What matters is what you do next.
Maybe they should have taken their own advice there.
Call of Duty Black Ops 7's campaign is a wild one thanks to the scope of its ambition. Not every roll of the dice pays off, but there's enough enjoyment to be found across its 11 missions to not feel like a dud, at least when played in its desired co-op fashion. Beyond that, its endgame has the seed of a good idea that could be nurtured with future efforts, but it comes across as a little...
Here's how you make Endgame amazing. You make it so that when you exfil with an exotic weapon, you can put it into an inventory. It essentially works as your primary weapon and you can keep it in your inventory. Goal is to collect them all, because right now there's no goal to endgame in that at all. So the goal is to collect all 30 exotic weapons. Boom. There's one good improvement. Improvement number two. Improvement number two is you make it so that those exotic weapons can be used and they count for headshots, weapon camos, and weapon levels. Those two improvements vastly improve endgame.
repetitive and supplementary
like Pokemon,
to the
yes, you gotta
story
catch them
Black
all.
Ops 7 is trying to tell. With satisfying gunplay and very fun movement abilities providing solid foundations, there's a reasonable mix of styles on show here, even if it doesn't fire on all cylinders 100% of the time. Despite being a step down from last year's exhilarating Black Ops 6 campaign, it certainly takes some big swings. They just don't always land. It's not bad, it's not good, it's simply okay.
That's why people are mad. They gave it a higher rating than Battlefield. In reality, I think it's very hard to compare the two because Battlefield legitimately is just like kind of like a plain Jane military campaign, whereas this one, they try to be something completely different. So I could actually see that if you are not a Call of Duty fan, going and playing this campaign could be a 6 out of 10. But I think if you're a Call of Duty fan and you've played all of the campaigns, this is like a 2 or a 3 out of 10 because you've come to expect a certain thing with Call of Duty. If this campaign was not titled Call of Duty, it's probably a 6. Like just plain and simple, just like that. Like that's the issue with it, right? What did they give the Modern Warfare 3 campaign? I don't even know. That's a great question. Let me know in the comments if you know, but it's my review is going to dive in a lot deeper than that, especially with the story part of things, because the story part of things is really what disappointed me. But yeah, that's IGN for you.